Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from the wealthyhomeowner.ca, Canada's authority on home ownership. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Jim.
Ross, much has been written about CMHC's failure on their forecast issued in June on the pandemic. A listener asked, CMHC told us that prices were going to drop in Vancouver and sales would collapse. Just the opposite has happened. Where can we turn to get advice on buying in this kind of market?
Well, in all honesty, Jim, I don't think anybody needs any advice on this one. They can just use their common sense themselves. I mean, in all fairness, they don't even need us for this, because they just simply should not be buying. You should not be trading up. If you're looking to cash out, that's a different story. If you're looking to down quality the home that you own, now that quality could be in downsizing, and that downsizing may mean that you get a higher quality of home in the process. But in terms of the housing stock, that is a quality downgrade. Then, you know, your opportunity really was in the months of September, October, that you should have capitalized on it. CMHC is wrong, because what CMHC is doing is they're looking at the housing market through the lens of the Canadian Real Estate Association and what the Canadian Real Estate Association tells them each month and has told them for decades. So that is the lens that they're looking through. So when you saw those people commenting, I think it's Braden Batch, I think, is out in Vancouver for CMHC. I think Eric Bond is partially responsible for what is written out there. So from my perspective, these are two people unqualified to even comment about the housing market. They may be commented to comment about economics. They may be qualified to comment on demographics, but they are not qualified to comment on anything associated with the housing market. That means housing starts. That means home trades, home sales, home prices. They're not qualified to do that, yet their ignorance allows them to do so. You know, the old saying, Jim, ignorance is bliss. Why is CMHC wrong? Well, I would tell your listeners that when you're listening to the show, I know you're on the internet somewhere. Pull up your Google account, and I want you to type in how many homes exist in Ontario. How many homes exist in Ontario? And do that in a Google search. You can do how many homes exist in British Columbia. You can change the wording. How many homes are in Ontario? How many homes are in British Columbia? You're not going to find an answer, folks. I'm sitting here in 2020, talking to Jim on the show, with data available at my fingertips that lets me read every single housing market down to a minutia. The level of detail that is available is ridiculous. Yet, the government itself is incapable of finding the data that we have access to. And it's evident when you do a Google search how many homes exist in Ontario. Okay, Jim, pick any city in Canada. Any city in Canada, doesn't have to be a big city, any city that at the top of your mind, tell me that city, and I will tell you exactly the number of houses that exist in that city.
Abbotsford.
So I pull up my spreadsheet, I'm pulling up Abbotsford, and I see this number. There are 49,994 homes in Abbotsford. Now, your listeners can Google how many homes in Abbotsford. How many homes? I mean, my breakdown, Jim, is even better. If you said to me, Ross, how many high-rise condos, rentals, and ownership exist in Abbotsford, I would tell you there are 13,950. I can tell you that there's 560 farms in Abbotsford. And so the listeners don't think this is a setup. Jim, you can pick anywhere else in Canada that you want me to describe here on the show. Anything you want, Jim. Any city. Come on, Jim. Give me one city, any one you want.
Well, who would pick Abbotsford?
Well, nobody. I mean, give me some. You lived in Alberta for a while, didn't you?
Red Deer.
Red Deer. Okay, Red Deer. So I'm pulling up my data here for Red Deer. And you have picked a place where I do not have data for. Okay? So you have actually picked a place where I do not have data for. Now, let me just do a little bit closer. What's the closest town to Red Deer, though? Oh, wait a second. No, wait a second.
It's halfway between Edmonton and Calgary.
Yeah, no, wait a second. I do have Red Deer. I typed it in wrong, okay? I typed in my own Excel spreadsheet the wrong search term, okay? So here's the numbers for Red Deer. There are 47,192 homes in Red Deer today. If you want to know about high-rise apartments, there are 10,053. I know these numbers, okay? This is the data that's available. This is the data that's available for today, right now. Yet if you go to the CMHC website, you can't do that search on their website. You have to do a search on their website only if you're looking to have new home construction that is a result of surveys from builders, which means those numbers are not accurate. I am using granular data that is so accurate we can break it down to community level. So
now I did my own little Google thing here. How many homes in Abbotsford? The city website comes up. I go statistics, City of Abbotsford. They can tell me what the population is, how much land is zoned residential, commercial, industrial, but they don't tell me how many homes.
Right.
They tell you what the tax rates are.
Right.
But
they can tell you how many people are there, right? But
yeah.
They can't tell you how many homes are there.
And what's more, their population data is out of date.
Right. Now, if you go to land titles,
yeah,
you can get that information. Now, I don't know if land titles will give you a total, but you can go to land titles. But if you don't have all this information at your fingertips, you're not qualified to make a forecast on what's going to happen.
Oh, in BC, you now have to pay to find out about land titles.
Right, but the government doesn't, right? The government of Canada, CMHC, doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
They could have actual counts of what the number of homes, because here's the beautiful part. Jim, when I'm talking about Red Deer, 47,192. With Red Deer, I know how many homes are going to be closed on that were brand new homes built by the builder that will be closed upon at the end of this month. So not only did I give you a count that the homes that exist now, I'm able to give you a count of the number of homes that are going to exist at the end of this month, because the builders have built new ones. There are 47,224 unique houses that will be in Red Deer on November the 30th, when the last closing date from the new builders happens this month. Why am I the only one who seems to have access to this information? Now,
I was just going to ask you, Ross, the government's making very important decisions about our lives and our future with what seems to be a very incomplete database.
There you go. CMHC right now has a competition on where they're awarding $500 million to people who go out and get data that I already have in my Excel spreadsheet, data that our advisors use every single day to analyze housing market. When someone makes an absurd comment like, prices in Gravenhurst, Ontario are going to be up 45% year over year, we say, are you crazy? The reason the average selling price is up in Gravenhurst 45% is because they had two houses priced over $1 million that sold. And those two houses alone raised the average selling price that month to this astronomical number, where you're getting these false claims of a 45% gain. CMHC is sitting there forecasting a number that they don't even calculate themselves. The OECD did a report on property price indexes, Jim, back in 2013. So again, your listeners can Google OECD residential property price index, and there'll be somewhere in there. There's going to be a link to that work. It is a massive work. It involved economists from across the world. It involved every OECD country participated. The StatsCan was our participant from Canada. All of these countries were fighting for a better house price index. At the end, this book, I think, is about 300 pages. At the end of this work, they have no solution. Well, why do they have no solution? Because they're not measuring housing markets the way the housing market functions. We are talking the leading economic minds for housing from around the globe could not come to a simple conclusion to what house price metric they should be using. And my answer is, when I read through the work, was that they shouldn't be using any of the ones that they have, because these are the works that lead to the false forecasts that CMHC is now saddled with. CMHC cannot delete this work, this report that they issued, that this listener is commenting on. This cannot be deleted. It will be stored in the Government of Canada archives. I think the only thing that you can't find is the climate change data, which the government erased a couple of years back. But everything that CMHC has ever done, I can fully go back and get access through it to the archives if you know what you're looking for.
Ross, I have a real simple question. They're offering, what, $500 million? I think you could retire on that. Maybe not. I mean, Elon Musk doesn't find his money enough. But why haven't you said, hey, Ottawa, I'll sell you this database for half that if you want? Or would you rather just help individual Canadians get the truth?
What I'm waiting for is, I've been waiting for since I've been on this show, for the trading cycle to conclude and for it to finish. Now, am I willing to give my IP to others so it can be misused to harm Canadians further? I mean, imagine, Jim, you've been operating on patients and telling everyone that the operation that you give for the last 40 years was the best operation possible. There is nothing better. There will never be anything better. And that you are 100% correct in the operation that you've been doing. And then you wake up and find out you've been performing an operation that is wrong. Not only is it wrong, it's actually causing damage to every single person you've operated on. Are you willing to walk out there like CMHC would have to do, like organized real estate would have to do, like all leading bank economists would have to do, like the total home lending infrastructure in Canada, every mortgage broker, everyone who appears on TV talking about housing markets as if they know what they're talking about would have to admit? Of course you would never do that. You would spend the next 10 years finding a workaround and a way to extract yourself from this situation. And that's what CMHC is going to find itself in early next year. Because this lockdown that has terminated first-time buyers from entering the market, I mean, they're still entering, but the numbers basically are negligible right now, which in turn caused the average selling price to increase, as reported by the Canadian Real Estate Association, which gets reported by CMHC, and they're shaking their heads. Braden Batch and Eric Bond in Vancouver are shaking their heads. This can't be possible. House prices can't be going up in a recession. How is this possible? This has never happened before. And it's not just a little house price change. It's massive. How is that happen? Look at the house price change they're recording is historic. And they're now sitting there twiddling their thumbs, looking how they're going to cover their butts and how they're going to explain this to their bosses, to the Canadian public, to the governments that they're responsible to. So if you entrusted him with that information, because you certainly wouldn't just give it to another corporation, you certainly wouldn't give it to a bank. Banks can pay for our forecasts, but we're not going to tell them how we're going to forecast. Financial advisors can pay for our forecasts, but we're not going to tell them how our forecasts are so accurate. We can go back from with our formula and apply it from 1990 through till today, and our forecasts have never been out more than 0.5%. Never once. Any national market, any of our provincial markets, any of our major CMAs, they have never been out. Even our MLS system forecasts are never been out. So when they tell you you can't time a housing market, I'm going to tell you these are the same people who misread the simple, common, expected impacts of a trading cycle halted in November, job losses that incur, the market reopening, and all the people that were facing homelessness trading up into a more expensive home because they hadn't lost their jobs. The reality begins to set in this month. And don't you think it's funny, folks, that all of those pontificators that have been out there for the last few months giving early housing market stats for the Toronto real estate market, the Vancouver real estate market, have been silenced the last couple of days. Why the silence? The silence is because reality is starting to hit home. And those who have pretended to understand how housing markets function are going to be exposed for who they really are.
Ross, it sounds very much like you're quoting Jack Nicholson. You can't handle the truth.
Well, we have an economy, Jim, in my opinion. Now, this is my opinion. So the housing market is not an opinion. These are facts. I am not a trained economist, although I dabbled at university as a professional student for 7 years. I had a great time at university, so I'm not saying that I was there for academics per se. But I am not a trained economist. I am a housing market analyst who practiced in the industry for 30 years and was the third generation of my business to do so. So, yes, you cannot handle the truth, folks. House price illusion, in my opinion, is what the entire economic structure of North America, at least, is built upon. My data can show exactly how the Canadian gross domestic product is delivered and increases. My data, our data, can show you how our trade deficits that have been ongoing since 2013 have been paid for. My data, our data, could show you how governments are able to run deficits. But I think, like Jack Nicholson was cited by you, Jim.
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah. You can't handle the truth. And maybe Tom Cruise is acknowledging, yeah, that's right.
I think Demi Moore played a big role too. We'll have more from Ross Kay right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, Canada's Home Price Index has recorded a 10% annual change in house prices nationally for October. We got a question asking, can Ross tell us why he continues to cite price change that is not corroborated by other house price indexes?
Goes right back to the earlier question, right, Jim? Goes right back to the earlier question. If you see someone out there that includes Canada's Home Price Index or the MLS House Price Index or the Benchmark Price Index, what I'm telling you is, in a debate with my laptop, and my access to my data set, I can make that person look like a total idiot. Someone who is commenting on things they are not qualified to comment on because they're ignorant to that topic. Look, I am not qualified to speak to the reason behind climate change, or even if man is responsible and for what percentage he would be responsible for. I am ignorant to that field of study. I may think that I know about it, but I'm not qualified to talk about it. House price indexes, oh yeah, I'm qualified to comment on. And I'm qualified to comment on for this reason. Economists believe in the Case-Shiller Index in the United States, which is called hedonic house price measurements, where supposedly they only measure the same home that is sold twice. In other words, if your local MLS system reports 1,000 sales, those using the hedonic house price model only uses homes that have sold twice. Oh, interesting. Okay. Sounds interesting. Sounds maybe true. Of course, hedonic house prices don't account for RMRs. What is an RMR? Renovation, maintenance, and remediation. The things that you have to do to change the house. So, if that house has had an addition added to it, and you're comparing it as it was as a house 10 years ago when the people bought it without the addition, you're going to show a huge house price gain because it's no longer the same house. The group of houses that you're measuring in any given month is never comparable. So what they have to do is they have to say, this house sold 7 years ago and this house sold 10 years ago. So we know the one that sold 10 years ago averaged this much change. The one that sold 7 years ago has averaged this much change. So we have to use this average for the two combined. Can't do that because the two houses have not followed the same RMR budgets over their lifetimes. The only comparison you could really use would be brand new houses that are under 10 years old. So if you wanted to measure price change in those two houses on an island, you could do that. But since those new homes don't exist in an island, they exist within an existing housing stock where house price illusion is real until the housing bubble pops. The buyers of those homes get skewed by that illusion. That's why you can debunk hedonic house price models or house price indexes or real property price indexes or residential property price indexes or Korea's MLS benchmark price by testing it against the average selling price over the course of time. Because this is the funny thing, folks. Out in British Columbia, you've just had Helmut Pasternak retire, the chief economist from Central One Credit Union. Helmut was on the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver's website as the voice endorsing the benchmark price. You had the chief economist of Central One on the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board's website, stating the benchmark price is the best way to measure price. Now, obviously, what Helmut didn't do was sit down and record the average change of the average selling price between 2005 and 2019, for the sake of the argument, and all those house price indexes. Because magically, they're all the same. You have one index verifying the conclusion of another index, which verifies the results of another index, which supposedly have all totally different methodologies. Well, they don't have different methodologies. Because when you peel back the layers and you understand how these methodologies work, and when you realize they're not measuring house prices, you realize why they all equal the exact same thing over time. I stress, folks, there is no discrepancy between the Canadian Real Estate Association's national benchmark price between the date it was created till today than there is with the average national selling price. Yet the national average selling price measures houses up in the Northwest Territories. It measures houses in the smallest town in Newfoundland. It measures every single home sold anywhere in Canada, not in the distinct locations the benchmark price does. Yet they both equal one another. Why? Because if a home buyer is told by a realtor that this house is worth $500,000, even when it's worth $4,000, and the realtor believes it's worth $500,000, and the banker believes it's worth $500,000, all of a sudden it's worth $500,000. Let me explain it in simpler terms, how this hedonic house price myth is just a myth. We talked about in the last episode how we have granular data for the housing stock. What I meant to say by that was, when I talk about Ontario, okay, I know that there are over 5.6 million homes in Ontario right now. I'm not going to give you the exact number. I know there's over 5.6 million. I also know how many there's going to be on the 1st of January, but we're not going to talk about that either. I know that the Ontario Real Estate Association has told everyone, and it's on the Canadian Real Estate Association's CreaStat site right now. The average home price in Ontario increased 17.5% year over year in October. So before 14 days from now, when they wipe that off and they put the November stats up, you're going to see that October stat is still sitting there. They're basically saying the average Ontario home has increased on average $109,000 in the last year. We're in the middle of a recession. People were paid CERB. Job loss is historic. People weren't even going out of their houses. Yet magically, the Ontario Real Estate Association has created a $109,000 gain in the average Ontario home price in the last 12 months. It is beautiful magic, Jim. 5.6 million homes at $109,000 increase equates to a $600 billion of home equity gain on house prices alone over the last 12 months. Let me put that into context to you folks. That is double what the Canadian federal government has added to the deficit during the course of COVID. It is more money than the deficit that will be accrued in 2020 and 2021 by the Canadian federal government. They want you to believe that $600 billion in wealth has been gained by Ontario homeowners in the last 12 months. 70% of that gain happened while the lockdown was underway. It is absurd, folks. These house price models are measuring nothing more than what the average buyer is approved to spend by Canadian banks in the month that they acquire a house. Nothing more, nothing less. When someone cites a 10% house price gain, and I'm here on the show telling you that it's a joke, it's a fraud, I have the data to back it up. Look, folks, I'm giving you here on the show the exact same analysis that I gave my parents. Okay, my parents cashed out, folks. My parents waited till September and they cashed out. This is a man who sold thousands of homes. This is a woman who sold thousands of homes. They're in their 80s. I had them cash out in September. They took the equity from their 40-year-old home. It was literally the family homestead in many ways. And they moved that equity into a brand new build that is currently under construction. They exited their house and moved into a rental while their new home is being built. The equity transfer was identical. The equity was exactly the same. So they didn't move down in house. What they did do is they transferred that equity from a late trading cycle property. In other words, a property that sees its greatest house price gain at the end of the trading cycle into another property which will see the least amount of house price decrease going forward because it is a brand new single detached home in a community where the building rate is low. So that home will always have a buyer because you're basically buying it at its replacement cost with the additional profit the builders are able to extract from the lots that they purchased at a lower price. What that basically means is, I am saying here in the show, I moved my 80-year-old parents. In September, they sold their property at peak market, okay? It was a property that was a late trading cycle sale. It was a property you had to sell at the end of the trading cycle in order to maximize your profit. They took their money and they put it into a brand new home, which will be a home least impacted by a correcting housing market. They are still going to see a reduction in their equity on that new property, but it won't be the same loss they would have had to have withstand on their old home. That's going to make them feel a lot better over the next years of their lives. It's not going to make any difference in their lives because their houses is paid off, but it's going to make them feel different every single day that they wake up. The 10% annual change in house prices recorded nationally in October on Canada's Home Price Index via the hedonic house price model is simply house price illusion. It's the illusion that is wiped out as a housing bubble breaks.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Value from success. Growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, Vancouver is going to increase its 1% vacant home tax to 3%. Our leaders and economists are citing this increase as beneficial to local families to reduce house prices, make them more affordable. Do you see this change as impacting the market at all?
No, Jim. It will not impact. It's not enough. The vacant home tax is not enough. The planned-in acceleration they have in the tax is not enough. If I am a wealthy investor who owns a vacant home in Vancouver, because of the structure of your housing stock, and depending on when I bought, if I was stupid enough to buy in 2016, I'm going to hold on to that property for a long period of time. I don't care if you charge me 3% a year, because my house, over the long haul, will exceed that increase. Okay, I'm going to see the compound annual growth rate of 3%. I'm going to withstand a correction, but over the next 25 to 30 years, I am going to average higher than the vacant home tax would cost me. I am also going to benefit from the assessed value format of the home tax, because the flawed methodology used in BC assessment is going to add to my benefit. The tax will not be as strong as it should be, because my property value through the appraisal process will be undervalued. Also, what everybody seems to forget is that there's loopholes in this vacant home tax that allow you to keep your home vacant and avoid the tax anyways. The loopholes that existed on day one are the exact same loopholes that remain on day 650, whatever it is. Those loopholes are there. The reason we don't cite the loopholes here on the show is it gives those who want to use those loopholes to their advantage. And this tax, in our opinion, Jim, is virtually like every other housing market attempt to slow the market or reframe the market that has gone on. And we look at it this way: if you play hockey, the rules were designed for the offense and the defense to compete equally against one another, depending on which side of the game your team is playing on in a given moment. The rules are designed to allow each team to compete equally against one another. They do that by looking for, when they're setting the rules, and then as they evolve the rules over years, I mean, we don't really see many rule changes anymore, to allow this competition to take place. They want to have an equal and fair competition. Now, they know coaches are going to try to circumvent the rules. They're going to try to capitalize any loopholes that are left. And when needed, they will change the rules. But the rules they're setting in the first place they're always looking at, how could someone attack us? How could someone take advantage of this rule? Because you're always setting up the rules that are going to be used against you too. You're always setting the rules with that mindset. You know, it's a competitive sports mindset. And our political leaders never ever do this with rules around housing. Our political leaders never assume that any loophole or any flexibility that they leave into their policy will not be capitalized on by a stakeholder somewhere in the industry or outside the industry or participants in the industry. They don't view it that way. So they build these policies and leave all these loopholes in place, which 4 years later, when they're left power, the new people come in and they don't see the loopholes. I mean, look at David Eby. David Eby had all of that information in British Columbia years ago. What has he enacted to close those loopholes? Nothing. Those loopholes still exist. On my website, our right to own policy exists. It is still there. It is still available. It clearly identifies a way to prevent the opponent from using the rules against you. And we look at it this way, Jim. We'll go back to the hockey example. And I'm not a hockey coach. I'm a basketball coach. Okay? So I'm picking hockey because it's, what we all talk about. The hockey team has the rules that they have to play against. Those rules have been perfected to allow a level competition to exist. So one group cannot capitalize on another group by violating loopholes in the rules. Those teams select their players based on that rule set. Because if you remove the blue line from the hockey ice rink, your selection of players is going to change. The format of your team is going to change. Not only do the players you select change, but the teams that are allowing those players to develop, they follow that set of rules. They're building players for that set of rules. We take a step back. That means junior hockey. They build players for those rules, and we go all the way back to the youngest kid playing Timbits hockey in their local arena, and she or he plays by the exact same rules, or with those exact same rules in mind. The entire system of hockey is built to create a level playing field at the elite level of the sport. Everyone wants that competition to be equal. That's not the way it is in housing. The vacant home tax was not looked at from how it can be attacked. They're raising the tax because they saw a little reduction in the number of vacant homes because of the first implementation of the tax. Okay, so they saw who moved into those homes. How many families in Vancouver that did not have a home to live in moved into those homes? Why are those numbers not cited? Well, I know why. Because there are none. Those homes were filled up with people who normally wouldn't be leasing the homes.
And Ross, the loophole that people use to get around the vacant home tax is if that home is under renovation, you don't have to pay the tax. Now, I start digging a hole in the front yard, I can say it's under renovation. There are houses that are famous in Vancouver that have been under renovation for over a decade. The guy moves a little dirt around in the front yard and says it's under renovation.
That is a loophole. That is true. That is not the primary loophole.
But it's one of them. It's
one of them.
Yeah.
So here you are, a layman, per se, a guy who I've spoken to for the last 3 years. So yes, you've accrued information over that time, but you've picked up on this, but our politicians don't. I mean, this is the exact thing. Look, folks. Foreign buyers. When a foreign buyer buys a Canadian home and they got to pay 3% tax on it per year based on the appraised value the City of Vancouver taxation methodology arrives at. Okay? If their house drops in value, they are going to probably see a tax write-off in their home country. There is going to be a time when any losses that they incur on that real estate are extractable at home through their taxes. If it's a wealthy American buyer who's bought one of those homes, this is very easy to do in the American tax code. I don't know what the Chinese tax code is, but I'm sure that there's some way that they're able to get around this. Because specifically the group of buyers who is buying. Now, Hong Kong buyers who are Canadian Hong Kongers, that's a different story. Hey, they're Canadians. They own the homes. If we want to have dual citizenship in this country as an acceptable format, then non-dual citizen Canadians have to suffer the consequences. Okay? And they do suffer the consequences. You pay higher taxes. You pay higher home prices. You have a lower quality of housing stock available to you than when dual citizenship is removed as part of your Canadian citizenship. But that's an argument for the other day. No. This change to the vacant home tax will make no difference. Let's say that they claim it put another houses into the housing stock. Your rental problem in Vancouver is massive. It's being remediated right now because of new home construction that has gone on and is now going to be completed in the next 3 years. Because this is late trading cycle common behavior. The velocity of the housing stock, brand new housing stock, that takes place mid-cycle arrives after the cycle has concluded. That means when this cycle is concluded, all this amount of rental housing stock is coming to the market. This time it's even more to a higher degree because Uber and COVID, what's the Airbnb and COVID coincided at the same time. So you had people who thought they could buy condos and rent them out on short terms and capitalize their gains. They're finding out that's not going to be available. The vaccine in Canada, we're finding now, is going to be delayed for our delivery. Probably we're not going to see it ourselves till the fall of 2021 if you look at some reasonable data sets on the vaccine outcomes. In other words, the population wouldn't be immunized until at the earliest the fall of 2021. And that means those Airbnbs will no longer exist. This is coming at a time when a whole bunch of these young investors who are rock stars, the ones that you saw on HGTV, everyone else, the market is coming to a head. Now, I say it that way, Jim, for this reason. We saw this in Ontario in 1990. There were rock star realtors, HGTV-type realtors, out there in the housing market in the late 1980s, exactly the same as you've seen them across Canada during the last 5 years. And they all get wiped out. It all ends because, the fraud that has been ongoing gets exposed and the reality hits home. Your rental stock is going to increase. That will create another false narrative in your politicians who will say, we're off the hook. No, this is the time right now that you should be encouraging builders to build more housing stock. I would argue, Jim, at twice the rate. Our federal government is talking about bringing in 400,000 new Canadians, yet there is not a policy enacted today by Ms. Freeland to grow the housing stock to accommodate 400,000 new Canadians without negatively impacting the lives of the existing 38 million Canadians that are here now. They're bringing in 400,000 new people without protecting your existing citizens' housing choices. And all they need to do is drive the new housing stock construction business. drive new housing construction, open up green space, green land, and let people build. Look, I was just in southwestern Ontario last week. Southwestern Ontario, we're reviewing different cities. We've been meeting across Ontario with a lot of people over the last 3 weeks. You forget when you leave there how flat that land is, how much produce, how much food can be grown in that land. Instead of corn, we could be growing real food. There's no need for us to be growing food in the Greater Toronto area when you can grow it on cheaper land right down the highway.
And so Ross, of course, we have all these vacant condos and office towers. They wonder what to do with them. Turn them into vertical farms. I'd love to talk about this more, Ross. We're running out of time.
And we'll end the show with that thought, Jim, because the vacant home tax will have no impact with the change you're about to see in house prices going forward.
My guest has been home ownership consultant Ross Kay. Thank you very much, Ross.
Hey, thanks, Jim.
Canada's authority on home ownership at thewealthyhomeowner.ca. If you have any questions for Ross, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HouseStreet. We're also on Facebook. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HouseStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HouseStreet.com radio is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.